After switching to Linux, I've tried a few ways of running Windows-only apps without dual booting. And in this video, I will show you my preferred setup of Photoshop in Linux, with all hotkeys working properly with no crashes and no wine trickery. Enter WinApps, a project that allows you to stop dual booting once and for all, because WinApps allows you to run Windows in a container or a virtual machine and use RDP to access Windows apps and interact with them from your Linux system. Since the remote machine is actually running in your own computer, you have literally zero latency and everything runs smoothly. In this video, however, I will not be doing the full integration of WinApps into my system. Instead, I will be using Docker Compose setup and FreeRDP in order to run and use Photoshop. By the way, if you find this video helpful and like it, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. This would really help me with YouTube algorithms. If you want Docker Engine to run as smoothly as possible with no hiccups, you better not install it from your official operating system repository, because usually they would have older versions and they will have problems with integrations and whatnot. Just search for Docker install and your flavor of Linux. Go to the Docker docs, and here you will have this instruction. And then we just copy paste stuff from here. After you install Docker, it's a good practice to add your user to a Docker group so that you can run Docker applications without sudo. In order to immediately see and use the effect of adding your user to this group, you need to either log out and log in from the system, reboot your PC, or use this command. When you have successfully installed Docker, you can proceed to installing and setting up Windows Container. To do that, go to the WinApps GitHub repository, grab the compose YAML file contents, and create a suitable folder for the project. Then create a Docker compose YAML file. And here paste the contents and a few tweaks that I highly recommend that you make. First off, set some username and some not so common password. And given that security is not among the Windows' strongest traits, I would highly recommend to do whatever you can to safeguard your relatively safe Linux system. So the second thing that is required for that part, and just for your convenience, is this setting. By default, for whatever reason, developers decided that it would be a good idea to expose your whole home folder of your host Linux system to your Windows machine, which to me sounds like not so good idea. So instead, modify it like this. This setting will create in my Linux home folder a folder called WinShared, and it will mount only this folder to the Windows machine. And that can be used to exchange files between two systems. Save the file, run a terminal in this folder, and run a command docker compose up. It will start pulling Windows. Initially, it will pull the container itself, but later it will have to download and store somewhere on your system a Windows ISO. A problem that I will probably see. It pops an error because it doesn't like my IP address. That's because I'm running a VPN. So in order to be able to download Windows ISO from the official website, you will have to turn off whatever VPN you are using. After Docker finishes setting things up, you will see a message like this, and you can literally go to this IP address to see that your Windows is being installed, and you can just chill and wait. After some time you will see a screen like this, and that basically means that our Windows in a container is installed. Remember, I told you that we will have 0 or close to 0 latency. So we're not getting this in a browser. We will get this by using FreeRDP. Now, when we have the container set up and running, we need to set up FreeRDP to connect to the container. Of course, you are free to use Remina or whatever other tool you might be using, but in the context of this video and in the launcher that I will show you later, I'm using FreeRDP. So you just go to the same GitHub repository of WinApps, you scroll down to install dependencies. And this is exactly what you need to do. If you're running Debian or Ubuntu or anything built upon Debian or Ubuntu like Linux Mint, you just grab this command, run the terminal, update repositories, and paste this command. After that, we have FreeRDP properly set up. So what we can do next is we can check if we can connect to our machine. Now, to connect to the running container, we just use this command and it launches an RDP session. Now, if you're thinking, what the hell, am I going to always copy paste or type in this command? No, if you automate it, and I will show you how to automate it in a moment. We need to create 2 more files. First would be the launcher itself. So let's assume that your Linux username is Jack. Then if your WinApps folder is like this, alongside the Docker Compose YAML, we need to create a launcher.sh. So I just create a new document here. I call it launcher.sh, and I go to this GitHub repository and copy the contents of this file. You will find the link to this repository in the description to the video. Well, you can see that my username in Linux is user, and that's why I am going to set it like this. This should point exactly to the place where the Docker Compose YAML is. Next, here I need to specify the Windows password, and I can find it in my Docker Compose file. Now I need to make this file executable. So next thing that we need is a desktop entity. You can also get it from the same repository. And here I need to paste or type in my Linux username. Now I save it, and now I need to make it executable. So now, when I go to my apps, I have this launcher here, and I can launch it. And what it's going to do, it's going to check if my container is running. If it's not running, it will start it. It will give it 10 seconds to boot up, and then it would automatically initiate an RDP session so that I can use Photoshop or whatever it is that I want to use in my Windows machine. When I no longer need to use it, I can just run the same command again, and it will stop the container and close the RDP connection. For convenience, you can pin it to your panel, to your desktop. A few more options that I suggest you do change in your Docker Compose file. First of all, initially only 4 gigs of RAM is allocated for the Windows container, which is a bare minimum, I would say. So if you want your container to run smoother and you have at least 16 gigabytes of RAM, give it at least 8 gigs of RAM. Another thing is this directive initially is set to on failure, which means almost as it's commented here. Restart the Windows VM if the exit code indicates an error. But in some Linux distributions, what actually happens is on failure makes this container to automatically run when you boot up your system for whatever reasons. So if you don't want that to be happening, set this to no. And after you change anything in a Docker Compose YAML file, even if your container is not running, you need to go to your folder where the Docker Compose file is and run 2 commands. Docker Compose down, Docker Compose up with the force recreate flag, so that it would actually read the configuration and recreate the container again. Now, why would I want this thing to be running and stopping my container? Why not just have it hang out in the background? Well, not even to mention the resources that it's going to take and the fact that I will have for no reason a Windows machine running in a background. Another thing is that when it runs, it uses KVM virtualization, which is incompatible and creates a conflict with VirtualBox-based machines. So I use VirtualBox sometimes, and if the container is always in the background, I just can't launch VirtualBox machines. They pop an error.
Nice.